Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video. Today we shall continue analysing the 8th edition reveals that have been put out by Games Workshop so far. So far we've seen mixed, sort of good things and bad things for the Guard that, that seem to be coming through from the 8th edition reveals. Movement phase, looked a bit, that could be bad in some areas but good in others. The ability to have having the ability to be able to pull off a tactical withdrawal was a good thing, but probably only moving half the distance as everyone else is kind of a bad thing. The psychic phase, potentially very good for the Guard. Unit profiles, potentially being very good for the Guard armour divisions, but looking like infantry could start struggling. Maybe, we don't know yet. And now we're going to look, which we hinted at in the last episode, but now we're going to look at weapon profiles. Okay, so weapon profiles have some pretty big changes. Okay, so let's just go through. Let's just go through them. Essentially, what Games Workshop has shown us. So they used the bolt gun, the flamer, and the las cannon as examples. So essentially, let's just go over the biggest change there is so far, which is the AP system that we know and love is now gone. It's just gone. There's no such thing as AP 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 anymore. There is now, again, similar to fantasy. There's a lot of things similar to fantasy that that they're bringing over, similar to Age of Sigmar that they're bringing over. Now, there is simply an armor modifier system. So rather than it being a yes/no system, it's a case of if you have a 3+ save and a weapon is AP -1, it will be -1 to your armor save, so you will now have a 4+ armor save. Okay, pretty simple, which is interesting to say the least. Now, looking at the examples they've given us. The bolt gun, for example, is a 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, which I don't know what rapid fire 1 means. Does that mean that you fire 1 shot, but if you rapid fire, you fire 2 shots at half range? Who knows? So the bolt gun is 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, not entirely certain what the 1 means. Strength 4, AP nothing, and damage 1, which means 1 wound does 1 wound, essentially. 1 wound, doesn't do multiple wounds. Okay, so that's the first thing. There's no AP system. Second thing is, as I mentioned there, the ability for weapons to do multiple wounds. We mentioned this in the last one. So the example they give is the las cannon, which is got a very similar profile. It's a 48-inch range, heavy 1. Strength 9, AP -3, D6 wounds. So let's look at these two before we move on to the final one, which is the flamer. Okay. Number 1, it's looking like Guard, if we retain our 5+ armor save of Flak Armour, it's looking like Guard will be getting a lot more armor saves now. Okay. Looking like, because no longer will bolters just ignore our armor save. They have no modifiers whatsoever. So for a guards player, for an infantry player, that is interesting. It means that I suspect against the majority of small arms fire, we will get an armor save, which means in theory we should be taking about 1/3 less damage if we retain our 5+ armor save against the majority of enemy firepower, which is small arms. Does this mean that cover is no longer as essential as it once was? Possibly. That could easily mean that charging out across no man's land will give us, to deliver a bayonet charge, will give us a huge boost to doing that, because we no longer will be losing half our guys to AP5 bolters. Okay, so that's interesting. The las cannon doing -3 to the armor save means that things like Space Marines will now get a 6+ armor save against a las cannon out in the open, which is interesting. I would have thought a las cannon would have been strength 9 AP -4, meaning that nothing but the toughest of armor gets a save. But now we're looking at Space Marines having a 6+ and Terminators getting a 5+ armor save versus a las cannon. Fair enough. The D6 wounds thing is kind of interesting. It means that heavy weapons like the las cannon will no longer be quite as bad at shredding through large hordes of infantry. I mean, they say that, like, they'll get that in their paragraph. They say, "Oh well, it does. You know, it's not as good against guardsmen or orcs." And I'm like, well, is that true? I mean, if it does D6 wounds, does that mean it does D6 wounds from a squad? In which case, the las cannon has the potential to kill 6 members of a squad. That's pretty good. If we look at a current classic guard blob of, 4 las cannons, 4 plasma guns, those las cannons could be cutting through infantry pretty easily. On the other hand, if it only does D6 wounds to a single model, then it's basically back to where we were. So there you go. That's interesting. Flamers is the next example they use. There is no longer any template weapons. Straight away, I'm just going to let you know that. There is no longer large blast, small blast, or flamer templates. There's no kind of templates whatsoever. Now, instead, the flamer has an 8-inch range and it simply does D6 wounds. This is both good and bad. But overall, I would say it's kind of bad. Now, the flamer still hits automatically, so that's great. We don't need to roll to hit, so it's still a good weapon. But it's interesting. I think I think overall it's good. Or is it bad? You can still only see. This is why I'm umming and ahhing. Right? You can still only kill. I mean, as far as I know, you'll only be able to kill what you're in range of. Right? So if you shoot yourself out of range, you fire your flamer. You can only kill what's within 8-inch range anyway. So, I mean, I guess if it means that when you're trying to shoot a flamer at its maximum distance, you're still going to be able to, you've got a better chance of doing more wounds. But if you've only got one guy, let's say you've got a squad of 10 guys, and you've only got one guy who's within range of the flamer, well then, yeah, sure, you do D6 damage against that one guy. Okay, great, you've just got a better chance of killing that one guy. Doesn't really, I mean, it is a buff, but it doesn't. Does it really help? I don't know. Honestly, I don't. Also, the flamer has no AP value now, so not as good for burning through hordes. I mean, let me just read the full thing, because they say at the bottom, "Oh, flamers are amazing now." So let's have a look. Right, damage is big change. Single hit can deliver multiple wounds. We've covered that. Las cannons, for example, do D6 damage, allows to blast chunks of large vehicles, monsters, creatures. Okay, we've covered that. AP system is changing too. There's no longer a binary yes or no. Use armor save modifiers. Okay. Lastly, you can see that the flamer no longer uses a template. However, when in range, it causes D6 hits that do not have to roll to hit, and this applies even against units of a single model. This can be devastating, especially when used in large numbers. Trust us when we say we may be entering the age of the flamer as the go-to special weapon of infantry squads. Let the galaxy burn. Okay. So, I understand. Okay, so it makes Flamers are no longer... Sorry. Flamers are neither any better or any worse against Horde armies. You can still only burn what you're in range of, as far as I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong. Please feel free to correct me. However, using Flamers against monstrous creatures now could be a lot more devastating. Because if you have three, let's say you've got a special weapons squad for the guard, you drop down your special weapons squad with 3 Flamers, that could be potentially 18 hits you get against like a Demon Prince or a Carnifex. That's really good. If the Flamer remains at 5 points for the guard, then hey, that's not a bad weapon anymore. We'll have to see what the grenade launcher does. The grenade launcher could be interesting. The grenade launcher could do D6 wounds or D3 wounds. Hey, that's not bad. That's pretty interesting. But the grenade launcher crack version might do D3 wounds. That would be pretty interesting too. Who knows? Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. The biggest weapon that I am curious about with this new change is the grenade launcher. Will the frag version do D6 strength 3 wounds and the crack version do D3 strength 6 wounds? Maybe. Who knows? Right, let's have a look. The last thing that they say is the rules team behind the new game have taken the opportunity to rebalance the loss of the weapons with the new armor modifier system and the removal of the cap of 10 on strength values. We've made sure that every weapon has its use on the battlefield. D weapons, for example, are gone, and instead there is scalable strength and damage that matches the effectiveness you'd expect from every weapon. Right, so D weapons are gone, but there is the possibility that a weapon's just going to do inflict 10 wounds, damage 10. That is a possibility. It's a possibility. Who knows? So overall, let's just go through this quickly. So I am curious about what Rapid Fire 1 means. I'm pretty fine with... I'm okay with the armor modifiers. I've kind of got used to that by playing Fantasy a lot recently. Interesting how strength can be over 10, yet they've decided to keep the las cannon at strength 9. Interesting. Interesting, it only does... The las cannon of all things only does D6 wounds. I would have thought it did more. It'll be interesting to know if that D6 wounds applies to the unit or to an individual model. So for example, will a las cannon do D6 wounds to a squad of guardsmen or just do D6 wounds to a guardsman? Interesting. We don't know. We'll have to find out. So yeah, a few more questions raised. Good or bad? I don't know. There's no mention. There's no mention of. There's no mention of everything being able to wound everything, but we'll have to see. Like I said, they've said that strength and toughness can go over 10 now, but we're seeing weapons like the Flamer and the Bolt Gun and the las cannon retaining their current strength values. That worries me slightly. That does worry me slightly. But anyway, let's see. What does this mean for the guard? I don't know, to be honest. It means a lot of things. It means that Flamer spam is good. D weapons are gone, which is good. Las cannon spam could be, if it affects the whole unit, if it's D6 wounds against a unit, could be amazing. It's going to be interesting. Now, one thing I want to mention, I know I've recorded this video straight after the last one I did, which was unit profiles. I didn't talk about the initiative value being gone, or the fact that I didn't go into a huge amount about charging units going first. Okay, I didn't talk a lot about that. I'm gonna try and cover that. If they do a assault phase reveal, which I'm hoping they will do, then I'll talk about those bits there in more detail. Just because I it's a big, that there's a few questions I have about that. I know this is slightly off topic, but I just wanted to say it's said in that article that charging units go first. Does that mean if there's no initiative value, does that mean they always go first until that combat is resolved? Or, for example, if I charge first, does that mean I'm always going to go first until something else happens? How do we keep a track of, a unit charging another unit and then getting counter-attacked by a third unit? That's going to be tough to keep a track of who's going first when. So I still have quite a few questions about that. I'm going to wait and see what they say in the assault reveal, if there is one. Okay, but I just wanted to let you guys know I haven't forgotten about it. I've just decided to wait until the assault reveal. Okay, but going back to these weapons, it's interesting that they've gone to the armor modifier system. It's interesting they've gone to D6 wounds. I'm a little bit wary at the fact that the las cannon seems to only be strength 9. I thought it'd be like higher strength, and I'm a little bit wary it's only -3 AP. I'm a little bit wary it's only it's only D6 wounds. But we'll have to wait and see how, when the other weapons are revealed, we'll have to wait and see how the las cannon fits in there. Okay, so some potentially very good things for the guard here, but also potentially some not so good things. We're going to have to see how it goes. But there's no mention here of how casualties are removed. Hopefully that will be covered in the next reveal, which is the shooting phase one. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.